Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has postponed elections penned for September the 6th. The city's legislature's polls has been delayed by a year because of a spike in novel coronavirus cases. This has dealt a blow to the pro-democracy opposition, hoping to make gains in the vote. Hong Kong has reported more than 3,000 coronavirus cases since January.
Hong Kong's local government says it has delayed its legislative election for a year because of a spike in coronavirus cases. And it's a blow to opposition candidates who are going to ride a wave of resentment against Beijing to the polls. Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam confirmed her decision on Friday after days of reports that it may be coming. The opposition had aimed to win a majority in the Legislative Council, where half the seats are directly elected and the other half filled mostly with pro-Beijing appointees. The postponement of the vote comes after 12 pro-democracy candidates were disqualified from running. Among them was prominent protester Joshua Wong. Speaking at a news conference, he said his disqualification was invalid and ridiculous.
Even government censor me out from ballot. They can't censor my qualification to committed in the democracy movement in Hong Kong. And that's the reason they can't kill us all. Even they try to prosecute us, bar us to run for office and silence our voice, we wish to try our best, lest our voice being heard around the world.
The government denies political censorship or suppression of the right to run. Lam, who is backed by the Chinese national government in Beijing, said she had to invoke an emergency law to make the postponement, and no political considerations were involved in the decision. She told reporters that it was the most difficult decision she had made in 7 months and that it was aimed at safeguarding people's health. Hong Kong has reported more than 3,000 coronavirus cases since January, far lower than in other major cities around the world. But for the past 10 days, the number of new infections has been in the triple digits. Nevertheless, government critics are likely to question the justification for the postponement.
Well, for more on this story, we're now joined via Skype by a Hong Kong native who was given asylum in Britain, Simon Cheng. Simon, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you. This delay in the polls by a year, your immediate thoughts when you heard the news?
Well, I think that they used a perfect non-political excuse to postpone and even suspend the election. And because that is a COVID-19 pandemic, and that they said that is based on the public safety. But I would say in reality, their hidden agenda is actually they're worried and then they are afraid of the election could be, like the pro-democracy camp could have a landslide victory and even can occupy more than half of the seats within the Legislative Council. So it would trigger that's the constitutional issues, because if they occupy more than half in the parliament, and then they can stop, like all the draconian laws could be passed in Hong Kong, and Beijing would not let that happen. And then they don't really want to play ugly. So that's why they use pandemic as a perfect excuse to do it. So I would say that's they're clever.
All right, but in fairness, Hong Kong is a fairly densely populated territory, and there has been a spike in COVID-19 numbers, so there might be a legitimate reason to delay the elections.
Yeah, and you can see even they also carefully select the foreign country example to say that they have a lot of the reason to extend the election, because lots of democratic countries also they postponed that things. However, I would say, yeah, I admit that is a perfect reason for them, but we can't ignore that's their hidden agenda as well. And because that's I think it's so sarcastic, because that's they try to compare with other democratic countries, and then they think they're at level with the true democracy around the world. I would say, first of all, that's the need to read through the constitution. They're not democracy. Possibly they're limited democracy, but definitely they're now going down on a path to be more and more authoritarian, we can say.
So do you think that this decision has come from Beijing and not from Carrie Lam's office?
Yes, I think that they have a deep concern that the opposition can take parts of the power within the legislature. So that's they would use it as a reason. So I do believe that is the order from Beijing.
What was likely to happen? I mean, we've seen Hong Kongers take to the streets and demonstrate against things they're not happy with. Might this start another wave of protest action on the streets?
Well, I'm a little bit conservative about it because what we can see now, the draconian national security law, even they would arrest those people who wave the flag, which is not, like the government and authority want to see. And also, you can also see the pro-democracy candidates, even some candidates, they never ever cross the bottom line of the CCP. They try to be moderate and never ever say anything outside of the system and constitution. They still being disqualified and not allowed to run for the election. So no matter they use what excuse and reason to postpone the election, in reality, we can see even if we still run for the election, they could disqualify massively to those people the authorities dislike. And you can see the people now staying in Hong Kong, that is a chilling effect. They're very, very worried about their safety because it's not just you can argue the law and rule of law spirit with the Hong Kong police force. Now Hong Kong police force, they now turn into the secret police totally. So they can't argue that your legal rights cannot be even protected. So that's why the people are scared. So that's why most of the people, more and more people, they try to leave Hong Kong and to seek asylum around the world, including me. And if you can see now recently, I think just today, I and Nathan Law and Ray Wong and other activists on the top wanted list by the Hong Kong police force, and then they falsely claim we instigate the secession of the motherland, which is totally groundless and not true. And it's because I take the media interview, and then they retaliate and charge me and make it as a chilling event. So that's the people that are suffering in Hong Kong. And I do really hope that Hong Kong people can still fight for that and keep that faith. But the chilling effect is so true. And the people, they're very worried about it.
All right, just to make sure that I get this right, what you're saying is that doing interviews like the one that we're doing now has incensed the authorities to such a point that you are now on the most wanted list for inciting secession.
Yes, exactly. Because, like we leave the country, we leave our hometown, so we could be influential because we keep speaking up and lets the world know what's the reality and what's actually going on in Hong Kong and China. And actually the authorities is not very happy with it. So that's why they do it. And what we can see, some news, they have their internal sources from Hong Kong police force. They said, although they possibly, those so-called fugitive, they possibly cannot be extradited back to Hong Kong to face so-called trial, but they can send a high-profile message to the world that all the people, they not cross the bottom line, not to offend the Chinese authoritarian regime. That is, the message is very clear. But I would say, if what we are achieving is just for democracy, for the public interest and the cause for our people, if that could be the crime, we would take it not as a shame, but an honor.
There was a time where it wasn't clear how many people were for and against the democracy push that a lot of younger Hong Kongers have been pushing for in particular, and that there was a hint that older Hong Kongers perhaps were quite comfortable with the status quo. I'm just wondering, is the momentum shifting a little bit towards more and more resistance by some people who might not have had a position before?
I think now we do think that because the people, they are very unhappy with this regime, they choose to leave. So we can expect some of the people, they stay, they are quite loyal to the party, they would toast to the party lie, they are quite happy I'm not sure whether, why they were so happy with this totalitarian regime. However, if those people that have no choice and no chance but need to stay in Hong Kong, I would say that's government terror. We never ever would know and feel what's actually the people's feeling, because this kind of country is not democratic. So they would curtail, they would suppress those people, they so-called bad-mouthing the government. So what you can hear, what you can hear, the voice within Hong Kong or even in mainland China could be, a make-believe positive. It's because that's about the system. So you can see that the news, the press in mainland China have been strictly controlled by party. And now in Hong Kong, we are facing the self-censorship. So I would say even they do the poll, we never, ever to know what's actually the true feeling of the people, because they not let the people truly and freely to convey the message.
All right, Simon, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that was Simon Cheng, who's a Hong Konger activist who's now living in the United Kingdom. He's been given asylum there, and he's explaining just there that he's now on the most wanted list by authorities in Hong Kong. He's deemed as someone who is now inciting secession, and so if he ever to return to Hong Kong, he's likely to be arrested.